Hi, welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 58, Visual Signals. I'm Burke, and I'm unfortunately back in my remote studio. My co-host, Ross Payton, across the nation once again.
Yep.
It's okay.
Separated by space, but not time.
That's right. Only a little bit by time. Only a smidgen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's our first time back recording after traveling through all of May. So a little bit of catch-up news I just wanted to give people. Our May, air quotes, Patreon bonus episode is up where we chatted with Caleb Stokes about nostalgia, time, media, a lot of good stuff. And then a bit of an announcement. The Friday after this episode drops, Friday the 24th of June, we are going to be doing a live stream with Thinking Too Hard About Anime, who one of the co-hosts, Noah, has been on this show a couple times. And we're going to be talking about the work of both the late Satoshi Kon, who did, Perfect Blue, Paprika, etc., and his longtime kind of musical collaborator, Susumu Hirasawa, who did the Paprika soundtrack, did the soundtrack for other famous anime like Berserk. So keep an eye on our Twitter for details, but that's kind of like going to be a little live stream event we have coming up, and I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be good. I think it's going to be a good break into live streaming, which is something we both want to do. Well, and in this podcast, you do it for your other one, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I've gotten into a vibe with Role Playing Public Radio, like a weekly live stream for like 2 hours a week. And we just would look up random RPGs and talk about them. And it's been a lot of fun. So yeah,
it's pretty chill.
Vibing and chatting.
That's right.
Yeah.
But speaking of chill, today we're getting into physical media, which is something that we've talked about on the Patreon bonus episodes, specifically print media, not any physical media, because we have done vinyl and stuff as well, discussions. And we're talking about the Visual Signals Zine, which is a air quotes pocket-sized zine created by Kite, who is also with the Music's The Hang Up label, longtime participant in the vaporwave scene. And they just got into publishing physical media. So started with a thing I'm excited to read. I ordered a physical copy of it, but it hasn't arrived yet, is a book of visual signalwave, which seems to be like a collection of Japanese print media and advertisement and stuff. Seemed kind of cool.
Yeah, it seems to be like a lot of collage of like imagery from like Japanese media and advertising from like the 80s and 90s and that kind of thing. At least that's my impression of it. I'm really eager to hear what you have to say about the book.
Yeah. And I'm familiar with them also from collaborations with like Pat Chennington and other involvement in the scene, but I had not heard of this zine somehow. It kind of slipped through until you recommended it. So do you have any opening thoughts?
Yeah, I just like the idea of a vaporwave zine. And I think if you were to ask me what the platonic ideal of a vaporwave zine would be, I think it would be close to Visual Signals because it's a deeply personal project. Kite 80 talks a lot about what's going on in his life, where he is, why he started this. It's very autobiographical in that sense, which is a lot of like really great indie media. Comic zines are deeply personal, but it's very eclectic because I mean, early on it's Kite's show, but there were issue 6 now and there's an issue 0. So there were really 7 issues. You're getting a lot of submissions from people. And so it's getting a little bit of everything from a bunch of cool people. And also just as a resource for vaporwave, it's really fucking good because there's so many albums that are mentioned. And just like a paragraph be like, oh, here's what this album's about. And I'm like, oh, cool. I got to listen to that. Oh, cool. I got to listen to that. There's like fucking 20 albums. I'm like too many albums for me that I was like, I'm just going to have to stop. I gotta just start listening to them. I gotta stop thinking about them and start like actually going out and listening to them. There's so many albums mentioned.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot covered. So before we get into too much specifics, I wanted to talk about your point about it being autobiographical and him talking about himself. I also liked that. Like it took me a moment to warm up to it because I don't consume like a lot of these indie zines. So at first I was like, I just care about the vaporwave. Yeah, which is completely unfair because the stuff about what's going on in his life is actually really interesting because it starts off with talking about how like this started as like a COVID project because he had to move back from China and just various issues of like, here's my schedule. I have to spend all this time on like work and Chinese lessons and I only get like half an hour a day to really work on this and stuff. And Just broadly, though, it's interesting specifically in the context of this zine because the extensive inclusion of the self seems like kind of antithetical to vaporwave, which is always about anonymity and like liminality of being at that transition point between isolated but also connected to people through something that is a media. And like it makes it much more explicit than just like I'll go with Mallsoft, which just like we're all remember this music together, so we're connected by some joint nostalgia embedded in our brain of going to malls, but we're not really with other people. And this is like you're really with another person, and that's actually pretty refreshing in a way. So I ended up really liking that personal aspect of it.
Yeah, and you also start to see a lot of this, not just Kite, but other contributors as well. Like there's a lot of interviews with artists, and they talk about like, well, how did you get into the vaporwave? And it's really interesting to see when people got into it. You know, some people got into it really early. There's one artist in a more recent issue that's like, oh yeah, I didn't find out about vaporwave until 2018. It's like, damn, you missed that. But then as soon as I heard Floral Shop, I was hooked. You know, I was like, but yeah, that actually brings up an idea that I hadn't really considered until that. But like, you're talking about how vaporwave is about anonymity and sort of like disassociating. So I guess that's like another like duality, like this axis between being deeply personal and being deeply anonymous. So it's kind of like comfort and anxiety in that regard. So vaporwave's about this like unresolvable tension because the vaporwave is about the internet and what the internet does to people in internet culture. And in one way, you're deeply anonymous on the internet. You're just but on the other hand, it's also deeply personal because everything about you can be found online. Right. And you can bare your soul online. So it's, and I consider that.
And the internet, which is a common focus of like vaporwave aesthetics, is a thing where you are very widely connected at a shallow level to a lot of people. So you can be anonymous, but also impact the lives of thousands of people who download your music, for example. It's a weird space to deal with, to be in between.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, it's a really cool project. Like I said, there's tons of album references and reviews and just lists. The issues vary in length, but the smallest one is still like 50 pages. And the newest issue is like 160 pages or something like that. But just skim it for a few minutes. And the first album that's mentioned with like a little caption sort of encapsulating that, like, oh, I'm looking for some new vaporwave. Oh, here, like I found some in like 3 minutes, you know? So if you're looking on the lookout for new vaporwave to listen to, that would be it's a really good resource, if nothing else. Yeah. I will say though, is a very, very petty and personal sort of pet peeve. This has nothing to do with visual signals, but the I think issue, the way that they have you can read them all online for free, but they have this viewing program called Issue or something like that. Yeah. And what really annoys me is that every time you turn a page, it makes a page turning sound, a very loud.
You can turn that off. Oh, it's in settings.
Okay. Okay. Well, I did not see that. So I had to mute that tab, and I was like, God damn it. I want to listen to music and read the magazine and not hear this incredibly loud.
It is very loud. The first time I heard it, it startled me. And then I was looking through settings for other stuff. I'll put a link to the site in the show notes where it's all readable. But yeah, if you click the little gear, there's like a disable page turn sounds.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, reader. It's okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Kite 80. I love the project, but so yeah. Where do you want to get started in terms of talking about like this stuff in more detail? Because there's so many aspects to it.
There are. I definitely want to end with a grab bag of all the random stuff that they have in here, because it's some of my favorite stuff. So I think I first want to talk about the experience of kind of just reading them all in order, because there's an interesting progression. Because at first I was a little uncertain, which you had pointed me to, because issue 0, again, I understand print stuff is expensive, etc. But issue 0 is just, it's just text. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. It's just like, here's some beats I made in Ableton, play around with them, which is awesome. Like I definitely was into it, but I was like, oh, huh. And then there's like this slow increase in quality where there's like more art, there's more varied.
The graphic design. Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden in issue 3, it's like a full color, beautiful zine. So I'm glad I stuck with it.
See, I did the exact opposite thing. I started with issue 6. I read that first. It's like, all right, let's see where it is now. And then I'll go back. And I jumped around, actually. So I read them out of order. But I started with 6.
This is a metaphor about our respective personalities here.
Linearity is overrated, is what I've determined. So for me, it was, I read it full screen, just flipping through it and put on some vaporwave. And issue 6 actually was quite touching because there is a tribute to Lynshaven Virtual Plaza, who is his real name was Cesar Alexander. He was a Brazilian vaporwave artist who passed away due to COVID last year in 2020. It's a tribute to him. And so I started listening to Lynshaven Virtual Plaza while I was reading the magazine. And I really got into it. I really did match the feeling. The aesthetic of vaporwave is really encapsulated because it's very, in a lot of ways, disjointed. There's not really, there are themes to issues, but it's not like a Wired magazine or anything else like that. It is. No. Yeah. It is what contributions we got, and we're just gonna throw them together, but we're gonna make it look cool. For me, it also kind of made me realize how important it is not just to have artists, not to think about artists in a scene, but also like the other people who organize and promote and document a scene are also important to to vaporwave and to any sort of subgenre or artistic movement, because vaporwave is really an artistic movement. It's not just a music genre. So kudos for, Kite for taking part of that, and also just all the promoters. Oh, like Ronnie from Vaporspace St. Louis.
Saw him in there.
Shows up. Yeah. Several times. They're all working together, and it's really important work, and it's clearly a passion of love. Nobody's doing this to get rich. I think that's why, one of the reasons why I like the project so much, because it is clearly about the art. Everyone here is pretty sincere in their enthusiasm for vaporwave, and nobody's trying to cash it and get you to buy all. I mean, there's merch and tapes and stuff like that, but it doesn't feel cynical like a lot of more slick publications would do.
Sure. We are absolutely on the same wavelength on this one in both regards. So first, to your point of art for art's sake and commercial sake. Versus commercial sake, I should say, rather. So that's a really great aspect of this, which is what really drew me to it, is that I think Visual Signals has a lot of the same ethos of the show, which is vaporwave is a serious thing. It's not a meme. Deserves discussion, deserves curation, deserves being highlighted, talked about seriously. And they do the same thing that we try to do here. But your first point is the one that was actually going to be my first point also, which is how essential curation is.
Yeah.
And people doing the work. Because I was looking at lists of here's all these album releases, or here's the Bandcamp top list, or here's an ad for this, or here's Blank Banshee's tour dates and stuff like that. And these are all things that you could go look up. But it's so important to have people do the effort, put in that effort for you to look it up, to disseminate that information. That's really, really important work. He talks about all the work they put into doing Pad Sheddington's top 100 vaporwave albums video. That's important. That's important to have.
Yeah.
That's a necessary curation step. And that type of work is deeply unrewarded.
Yeah.
It should be rewarding for the people, but is deeply unrewarded by the consumer. And I think this really highlights how important that is, because there would just be, like I said, an album list. Here's all these albums coming out in June, or here's my favorite albums or whatever. And you would know a third or half of them. And the other half would be things you maybe never have heard of, just because too much is produced. Yeah. So I really appreciated that. So I'm really looking forward to the next issue 7, which they said they're working on, just to see what stuff I've missed in the last few months of vaporwave. Because I'm sure I have. I unfortunately have a lot of time sinks in my life.
Well, it's also that vaporwave is a very scattered genre over a lot of different platforms, and it's hard to keep track. Even if you're paying attention, there's no this is your one-stop shop for all vaporwave news. There's no and this is one of the few places that actually attempts to consolidate and or collate really all the vaporwave news. And Kite talks a lot about how he tried. This was not his first project. He mentioned he started a YouTube channel and his record label, Music Hang Up. And he talked about how he was unsatisfied with the YouTube channel because he had only 1,000 subscribers. Most of his videos were under 1,000 views. And I watched some of them, and they're good interviews. He does interviews with artists, but also he did a series of musical concert, where he would record a vaporwave concert. And it looked, I actually had one on while I was reading the there's, a lot of bangers tunes, but it's like a bunch of people in a small room, bopping along to vaporwave and future funk while the DJ plays. And it's good, important stuff, but obviously a platform like Tube, that's just going to disappear unless it, anything that's not favored by the algorithm is just going to instantly disappear. So I can understand that. But once he started with the book of visual signalwave, that was actually very successful, selling like 500 copies or something like that. And he's like, oh, well, maybe print media is something I can do. And it turns out, yeah. There's not really print media. I mean, like I said, there was another magazine, Private Suites, but that has since disappeared. And yeah, there is a void, and Visual Signals is doing a lot to fill it.
Yeah. Super important work. What else? What can we talk about? There's so much. I just have like a grab bag of things that I thought were fun. Yeah, there's like artist interviews and stuff are cool.
One thing I want to talk about is, since we're one of the shock of people who are doing work to keep the scene and the movement active, are the micro record labels. And they're not really record labels, they're tape labels.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them. And I think a lot of the people interested in vaporwave are people who are like not necessarily musicians, but you're like, hey, I can get a tape deck and I have an inkjet printer that can print, J cards. Or J cards that I can cut out. I can be a record label because I can do that 10 or 20 times and ship 20 cassettes.
Yeah.
Random people around the world. And there's a lot of them, it turns out. And they're clearly doing it, just to make their money back. Like, they're not doing, like, you're not going to make any real money, selling 20 cassettes, but it's fun to do. You can make a really cool cassette. It gives a lot of insight into that because he interviews a lot of these people who are setting up these micro labels and, what their aesthetic is. And there's some articles about how to do this kind of stuff. And it's fascinating because cassettes it's physical media, but it's actually achievable for someone in their bedroom. Like, unlike a vinyl or even CDs. I mean, I guess you could get a CD burner, but nobody really does that because the standards for an audio CD are actually kind of high. Like a CD burner doesn't. You can technically do audio CDs, but I think there's a difference between like a CD burner audio CD and like one that is professionally made.
Yeah, there's some differences in pressing, I think, but yeah, it's not as universal as like an analog cassette.
Yeah, exactly. And an analog cassette, like there are no standards. Like most of these cassettes aren't even going to be listened to because most people, they're just collectibles. They're, I have a small collection of cassettes. I've listened to maybe a third of them once. And, because I do have a tape deck, but like why do you go to all that work to play something on a media that's going to degrade when you can when you have the download?
It's the beauty of it.
It's true.
Yeah. But even so, going back to our original point, even shipping out 5 cassettes is still like an important preservation tool because that stuff can get rediscovered somewhere and sometime down the line and something forgotten can be reborn or inspire new stuff. I mean, how long did like the Kmart tapes sit around just on a cassette or whatever?
Yeah.
Before.
That was like decades.
Yeah. Blew up everything. Yeah. So it's important. That sort of curation and preservation matters.
Yeah, it really does. I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah. This may be the only. Yeah, a lot of the people involved in vaporwave are even at the very beginning say, "Oh, we got to preserve this stuff. This stuff is ephemeral and will disappear unless we take serious work to do that." That's why there's so many like. I
mean, I think that's why people were so scared about Bandcamp. Like, what if if all that history just gets wiped out to protect some shitty copyright laws? Yeah, it's a legitimate concern.
It is. You remember in one of the issues of Visual Signals talking about like, oh, I remember when Vapor Archives disappeared, which was a online project, which was basically a website. They uploaded every single fucking Vaporwave album they could get, and you could just download them. So it was just a mirror of all Vaporwave and just gigs and gigs and gigs of Vaporwave. Because a lot of the albums do get disappeared on Bandcamp.
Yep.
Like sometimes copyright, sometimes the artist chooses to delete them, sometimes for unknowable reasons. Nobody knows why this artist, like the anonymity of a lot of Vaporwave artists means they can just literally disappear one day and you never hear from them again. You don't know if it was an alias. You don't know if that person just decided they hated music. You don't know what happened. So it happens. But yeah, I really do like that emphasis on the tape collecting culture. I wish I had physical space to keep tapes, but it's probably for the best. Like I decided I have one physical place in my house for keeping tapes, and that place is full. And I'm not going to allocate any more physical space in my house to tapes. Otherwise, it would never stop. So I have to get rid of some tapes before I can buy any more.
Aww.
Or I have to get a bigger place.
Get a bigger place. That is one thing I really want, a listening room whenever I end up in a bigger space, and just have tons and tons of tapes and vinyls and all kinds of stuff, CDs and everything.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing, I do like the articles too, because there's usually only like, it's like any other magazine where there's a couple of like big articles, like highlight articles. And then there's a lot of like, we do this every month, or just kind of random fillers and like advertisements. And the ads are for like vaporwave concerts, whether virtual or whatever, mostly virtual. In fact, pretty much entirely virtual. No, they mentioned like the Blank Banshee tour kind of. But like they talk about the articles, there's stuff talking about like future funk, 70s Japanese jazz, horror, signalwave, lo-fi hip hop, which the lo-fi hip hop article like went over a lot of the points we did in our episode, which I appreciated. It's like, yep. And they're short articles. They're pretty good. Like, I'd recommend just looking at the table of contents for all these issues, because the issues can go pretty long, especially like the newer issues. Yeah. Don't feel like you have to read every single page. Feel free to skip ahead to like, whatever article grabs your attention. Although it is worth flipping through too, because there's a lot of cool like photos and artwork. I appreciate that they wrote it for, their articles are very much written as primers for like the lay person, not for like, oh, you already have an academic background in vaporwave. Like we'll get into some dense jargon and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the articles too. I think one that caught my eye was pretty short, but it was like vaporwave as philosophy, like not just music, but like design philosophy, and in some sense, like a little self-helpy, but like, vaporwave maybe reminds you to like slow down and stuff, which I thought was like, okay, I get it. I would say broad thing of the articles is they kind of made me want to like submit something almost, which is one of my discussion questions. I should write something up for them and an email and a submission sometime, because I could write 1,000 words on something we discussed in this episode.
Oh yeah, for sure. Not even 1,000 words. I
guess it's more like 500 usually, because it's a zine. Yeah. So that's very doable. Yeah.
That's actually a good idea. I kind of want to do that too now. I hadn't thought about that. But
you want to dual submit something? We can write a group.
Ooh, yeah.
And the newer ones are longer. We could finally write up like the anxiety and comfort essay we've been talking about for years.
I'm thinking more like something a little more like vaporwave associated media.
Okay.
So I kind of wanted to do an article about Spliff Radio, which is a YouTube channel that does vaporwave visual mixes. I think you've seen these before. They pop up. Some of them have a couple of million views, but they're like, well, we'll talk about this after the show.
Sure. I would do an article on The Tower starring Paul Reiser.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So that's a good idea. So yeah, you could do a review of The Tower, and I could do one on Spliff Radio.
There you go. We're coming for you.
We could also do like a bunch of a one-page article about something.
Yeah.
Because they do a lot of one-page articles.
We could get Patsy to do some art, submit some art. Like I'll buy it. I'll pay Patsy for it, of course, and then submit it.
Yeah.
Because I think the rest of what I really want to talk about with this is like the grab baggy, miscellaneous type stuff. So if you have any other big things you want to cover, now's the time.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. But yeah, I want to talk about the grab bag stuff because there's a lot of cool little things in there. So yeah, they have a lot of photos that are very aesthetic of like Japan and China and stuff like that. But they also have a lot of like grab bag stuff. Oh, what's your favorite grab bag type of article?
That's a good question. I think probably it's tied, maybe a three-way tie, at least a two-way tie between all the old tech reviews. Like here's an old Zuzushi rice cooker, or like here's an old Panasonic tape deck, or an old Sony DV cam. Those types of earnest write-ups about old technology are cool.
Yeah.
I do like the little like music production synthesizer guide type stuff of like, here are some drum beats I've been playing around with. Here's like some synth patches that kind of sound like Telepath, that type of stuff. And then a close, I guess, second is cheat codes for old games.
Yeah, cheat codes for video
like here's
games.
Game Shark codes for Pokemon and stuff. Like
yeah. No, 100% cheat codes for GTA 2 and shit like that. It's very good. Oh, I should mention though, some of their longer articles have nothing to do with vaporwave specifically. Like they do one talking about the hunt for Slamfest 99, which was an event Nintendo ran before Smash Brothers for the N64 came out, where they got people in costumes dressed up as like Nintendo characters like Mario and Donkey Kong and Pikachu and Yoshi in a real wrestling ring and had them fight each other in like the parking lot of a casino in Las Vegas. And people are searching for any video record of this. Apparently it was live streamed, but this was in 1999. So it's like a real player type of live stream. So no one's been able to find a cached file of that real player video, and no one's been able to find a VHS tape of it, or there's no TV coverage of it that anyone can find. There's some photos of the event, but like that's about it. So like some of their longer articles are just kind of vaporwave adjacent. But yeah, I love the old video game cheat codes. I love the manga and anime reviews, the short little like, oh, and here's some stuff about the new Gundam Gunpla models that you can do. And talking now in Twitter manga. So talking about what's going on among manga artists. And just the random like street life photos. I think those are my favorite ones.
When they have the space for like random photography and stuff is really cool.
I think actually my favorite type of article is the nostalgic articles where somebody talks about something they're nostalgic for along with photos like, I like this bookstore. Now it's closed. Here's a photo of it at night, you know, when it's closed. And I remember playing Magic with my friends. And just here's the game store we did it in. And there's photos of just the game store without like people in it. So it looks abandoned. So yeah, it's very good.
Extremely good.
It's a very good grab bag of stuff.
And what else is there? There's like Chinese lessons. Go games, which is also interesting.
Yeah. Some interviews with video game developers. I feel like we could do it. You could do an article or something for them talking about the outsized number of expats in the vaporwave scene, because Kite 80 was an expat at one point. He spent, time working in China. Groceries spent some time in Korea, obviously. So I feel like there's probably a good number of vaporwave artists, promoters, and organizers who, influenced by their time overseas.
Yeah. I can see how getting away from all this greatly alleviates your stressful moments, hopefully, and allows you to be a bit more creative if you're not always embedded in American bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, also being surrounded by the, Japanese and Chinese aesthetic, that also that weird sense of isolation when you're in a country where you don't speak the language, or you only speak the language. So it's hard to communicate with people because your ability to communicate with people who, the residents is greatly limited. So it would be interesting to examine that. So something to think about for a future episode or an article for them. But I'm definitely going to talk about Spliff Radio.
Yes.
That shit rules.
So sum it up real quick. Visual Signals. Very, very good. You should check it out. You can read it for free online, but I thought they had a Patreon, but maybe not. If they do.
They mentioned it in an early issue. I don't know if they still have one or not.
Yeah, I didn't see it on their link tree, but I'll double check. But I'll put as much as I can to connect you with them, try to support it, keep this type of stuff going. Unfortunately, it does need people to buy it. So yeah, I just ordered it all off Amazon, which is still probably sub-ideal, but it was where they were all in stock. So sorry if Amazon's not as good a place to buy it. But yeah, in any way you can, I think you should definitely check it out if you're remotely interested in vaporwave or other stuff we talk about on the show.
It began as an aesthetic that was popularized by an obsession with 80s and 90s subculture, using glitch art, early digital graphic design, Roman busts, a fascination with tropical landscapes, Japanese culture, and of course, the redistribution of old 80s elevator music inspired from funk, new age, and smooth jazz.
Thanks so much for listening. It was really great to dive into some vaporwave zines, and I don't know, I feel inspired, like I said in the episode, to contribute something, give back. I feel like I kind of just sit here and just make little album reviews. Don't really engage with the community as much as we could. So maybe I'll try to fix that. Maybe that's a mid-year resolution if you believe in those types of things.
Hell yeah.
But next episode, we are getting back to music proper. We are doing Dungeon Synth Without Dungeons. That's the plan, assuming we can find some that satisfy. You found one album that is Dungeon Synth, but not about, by dungeons, we mean like it's not your D&D game in music form, which is also fun. We've done a lot of episodes about those types of albums, but we want to explore the genre, see if it's doing different stuff or people who do other things with it. I think you have a list of albums we're going to go through and pick some stuff to cover.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to also hear more of this, we do have a Patreon. You can find us at nightclerkradio at patreon.com, where we have 15 bonus episodes currently and a cool Discord that's constantly being filled with Ross's links and discussions thereof.
We've had some good discussion on the latest episode.
We have, yeah. The nostalgia and time episode went over really well. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. If you do want to talk to us, you can also find us at Night Clerk Radio on Twitter. I am at Burke McBurkinson. Ross is at Ross Payton. We're also Night Clerk Radio pretty much anywhere else that matters. Wherever you do choose to interact with us, just take a moment to rate, review, click an up button. You can even click a down button. The algorithm doesn't care. And if you're really feeling generous, you can. Engagement. Doesn't matter. I think that's true. I don't know. Click the up button just to be safe. And if you're really feeling generous, take some time to talk to some of the people about what we do. And word of mouth is still probably one of the most effective and sincere ways to share what you enjoy with other people. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.